All right, my friends, we're back. It's your boy Maine with another video, and we had another pretty big liquidation event yesterday, which is hard to believe. We had over $1 billion, probably more at this point, liquidated from the market yesterday, and you're like, how's that possible when we're not even a month out from that massive near $20 billion liquidation event that we had on October 10th. People were right back on with the leverage. They were right back into the altcoins. You really can't teach an old dog new tricks. People are entranced. They're engrossed. They are enamored. They're in love with the idea of trading leverage and with the idea of getting outsized return in altcoins. I totally get it. I've been there. Just as I've grown in my trading career, I've become a lot more selective with what I trade. I primarily focus on the majors now. There's plenty of volatility there, especially when you're trading size. And I'm really a BTC maxi from the spot perspective. Like Bitcoin's down 18%, 20%, I think, maybe at the worst yesterday from all-time high. Some of these altcoins are down 20+%, 30+% from a week and a half ago. So I'm not saying there's not money to be made in alts. I'm not trying to prevent you from trading alts. I'm just saying, the longer you stick around, if you survive, the more of a BTC maxi like me you'll become. I've also talked about this in prior videos where there's just so much competition for altcoins now with all the other things coming out, pump fund. I do really think that we're going to see more diminishing returns, and it's going to be way harder to eke out an edge in alts than it used to be. That being said, I've been talking about this weekly low forming for ages. Go back to October 10th. I said, hey guys, I'm still bullish. As much as this was a huge wipeout, I think that this was actually a good thing, and it's constructive for potentially another leg higher. So I've got my thesis that I've laid out over the past several weeks, okay? And I've been consistent. My trades haven't always been the best. I shorted 115K with you guys like last week, and then I tried to catch this low. I longed ETH a while back, and I thought I had the low. I got stopped out on a couple knife catches, but I haven't sold my spot. And the reason I'm holding on to a good amount of this spot, which is the spot stack in which I am in and out of the market with, is because I do believe we have another leg left. And what I did on Twitter today was I wrote out all the different things I've talked about over these videos. And this video will act as a summary of that because not much has changed. Even though we have a bit of a pullback here, I'm going to be banging on the drum about the same thing over and over again. So I think this will be a good example. I even did some preparation, which is very rare for me, just for you guys. So I hope you enjoy the video. Let's hop into it. So let's get over to, we'll start with the tweet itself, okay? And then we're going to go through piece by piece here. So my thesis for remaining bullish going into the end of the year has been built on a few things. And I've been going over this for well over a month at this point, okay? And I've been banging on the drum about the high not being in every time we've had a consolidation, every time we've had a major correction. You could find Trader Maine saying, the top is not in, we're still bullish. The top is not in, we're still bullish. It's not in, we're still bullish. All the way here, and I'm doing it again. So I've been consistent. I'm not one of these guys who's flip-flopping around, changing their bias every 2 minutes. Now, I do trade. I trade. So I flip my bias in terms of short-term trade ideas, long to short. You saw that last week. We're bearish at this level. We'll be bullish at this level. You take the trade. But in terms of my long-term view on the cycle, I've been super consistent, I think, for the entirety of this bull run. And I hope you guys see that. Not just, it sometimes gets lost on Twitter, lost on YouTube because I'm posting so much, but it's been the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm hoping that I can do it one more time. So first off, the 4-year cycle. I am a staunch believer that crypto runs on these 4-year cycles. It looks like a 4-year cycle. We're trading like it's a 4-year cycle. There's a good chance it is a 4-year cycle. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means I expect us to top at some point between basically now, right, October, that's not October at all, October and kind of like Q1 of the new year here. Q4 of 2025 going into Q1 of 2026. Now, there's a bunch of people saying, well, Maine, shouldn't the 4-year cycle have been October 6th? Because what they do is they say, okay, well, I saw some guy post on 4chan and exactly 4 years after this is October 6th. and they're therefore, you know, this is the top or whatever it is, right? And there's a few ways you can look at the 4-year cycle. I mean, you can look at it like, hey, every time we have a top, right, approximately 4 years later, we get the next top. Approximately 4 years later, we get the next top. And you can even go back to the prior bull run here to 2013. And I don't know if this chart goes that far back, but this was the top of that bull run in 2013-14. So there's this 4-year cycle, which is more in line with what the 4chan guy is laying out. He says, look, every time, right? But we are in that time window. It's not always exactly 4 years to the day, but I mean, this is December of 2017. Before that, it was November, December, January of 2013-14. This is 4 years later, October, November of 2021. Another 4 years later would put us now. Then there's this idea of liquidity cycles. There's another argument about business cycles. There's another argument about presidential elections. And every time we have an election, again, I posted a chart about this on Twitter a while ago, is about a year after the election, and there's a new president, right? So Trump came in here, right? 4 years later, or a year later, we get the top. We had our prior election before that in 2020. Right? And Biden became president here. And then you get the top a year later, right? And so quite literally, like there's your Biden election, right? And then there's your top a year later. And this goes back. There's all these different things, but the 4-year cycle theory is actually something that I learned from a guy named Bob Lucas, okay? And I'm going to show his Twitter here. Bob is where I learned the 4-year cycle from. So if you're interested in learning about the 4-year cycle, maybe I'll do a video of my own on it. But I learned it from this guy. This is not something he invented. This is just essentially a way that you can break down the market from these multi-year, 16-year cycles, 8-year cycles, 4-year cycles, down to these weekly and daily cycles. And really, they're a good way to map the highs and lows of the market. And so you'll see Bob always mark out these cycle lows and these cycles highs. And they are approximately, 4 years apart for the bull market. And then you break it down lower and he has, okay, based on this 4-year cycle, we should have these weekly cycles, right? These half-weekly cycles, these yearly cycles. And I'll let you go and dig into Bob's stuff. But the 4-year cycle I'm referring to has to do with the way Bob Lucas and other cycle theory traders, he's not the only one, there's a lot of them, talk about the 4-year cycle. But it just so happens that it lines up very well with this literally 4-year from top to top date. But if you go look at, the S&P 500, right? Where's one of these that goes way back? Like, I want one of these that goes way back. I should have prepared this. I did so much other preparation today, guys. I mean, but the point I'm making here is the stock market. The stock market follows these 4-year cycles, and you can go way back to like the 50s and the 80s, and you can see these 4-year cycles playing out in stocks. You can see these 4-year cycles playing out in crypto. You can see these cycles playing out in gold. So this is it's a school of thinking more than anything for trading. And it just so happens that Bitcoin has been following these 4-year cycles, and it's been lining up with the halving and all the other stuff. And so it's culminating, my entire point, in saying, listen, it looks like a 4-year cycle. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a fucking duck. So that is my thesis for now. I've been talking about this. I think that we are near the top. We're in the later innings of this bull stage, and we top soon, and I'm bearish for 2026. Next thing I want to talk about is the gold, BTC gold ratio. So first, BTC and gold generally have this correlation where gold will start its move, and then about 60 to 90 days later, Bitcoin will start its move. And rather than chart it out, Gamma Chan here, our homie, already did it. So what you can see here is gold will start its rally, right? And then about 90 days later, Bitcoin starts its rally, okay? Gold starts its rally. 70 days later, Bitcoin starts its rally. Gold starts its rally here. About 90 days later, Bitcoin starts its rally. And as of the time of this posting, which was about 3 weeks ago, okay, we were about 60 days into gold's move. Well, now add another 20 days. We're approaching up on 90 days into this gold move, which would line up very well. And again, I posted about this on Twitter in early October, this gold-silver ratio. It would line up very well with Bitcoin being ready to make its next move, okay? And coupled with that, I do believe that this chart is in the process of bottoming. I think we've had this period of gold outperformance where Peter Schiff has been grave dancing on us for, pretty good amount of time here. Gold's been shit kicking Bitcoin. But you notice here we had the sweep there at the top. This is our big range, right? Well, now we're sweeping out the bottom of this range. Whether this is the exact low here or not, I'm pretty confident this chart is due for a big bounce. And we're going to see gold underperform Bitcoin for the remainder of the year. So that would mean this chart going up, okay? Remember, if this is ETH BTC and the chart is bullish, that means ETH is stronger than Bitcoin. Well, this is Bitcoin gold. So if this chart is bullish, that means Bitcoin is stronger than gold. So that's, again, another thing that I believe puts itself in the bucket of we're lining up for a rally here on Bitcoin. This one is a bit more anecdotal, okay? But it does irk me nonetheless. Bitcoin has not had its blow off the top. We've had tech stocks, gold, even some crypto companies have had these parabolic rallies, and it just doesn't sit right to me that Bitcoin hasn't had it, and I think it's due. Not on its own. It's not just enough to say, well, Bitcoin needs to have a parabolic exit. I think the fact that we've had this parabolic rally, just straight verticalness here, right? Like, that's a much more vertical move than what we've had on crypto, right? Like, there's your April bottom. We went up, but then we pulled back. This thing's like just straight vertical, basically, obviously until this very recent pullback here, right? Same with the NASDAQ especially. Like, that is parabolic as you can get. And this is, of course, made up. A large part of the stock market here is made up by stocks like Nvidia, which again, out of the April lows, 150% move, right? Another 25% move just in September, where Bitcoin kind of has done fuck all. I mean, we had that rally, we had our 70% move up, whatever it was, but then we've just been consolidating. And then obviously gold itself, right, had its big parabolic blow off. And so I'm just like, okay, where is Bitcoin's move? When are we going to get our big parabolic move? And that, again, is one of the more anecdotal points for me, but I do think it's important, and I do think it's worth paying attention to when you couple it with this other information. Again, Palantir, and their stock that's just been on an absolute ripper, right? This also lines up with me thinking that the AI bubble, we got OpenAI, market cap of $1 trillion. Like, I think that the AI bubble is about to pop, at least short term. I'm not saying it's over. A lot of these stocks are going to continue to go higher, I'm sure, in the future. But I do think 2026 is quite bearish for a lot of this stuff, and it's going to be a bear market. And I'm going to tie that into something in a bit here, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So yeah, again, more anecdotal, but I do think we're due. The weekly cycle thing I kind of talked about already. I learned this from Bob Lucas, but effectively the weekly cycle low for Bitcoin should be putting in, basically right now. And we've got this perfect weekly cycle time. It could have been the October 10th wick. That's within the time window. But this is even better within the time window here. And basically, to me, this time window extends until about mid next week, November 10th. Between now and then is kind of when we want to see that low confirmed. And we had this big sell-off yesterday. We have unbelievably negative sentiment. And then on top of that, we get this bullish price action here at the low, right, where we sweep out this low. I wanted to see us to sweep out here, as you guys know. Didn't have to be perfect, right? We just got to be close. But I said 98K, right? If we weren't already in the low here, if this wasn't it, I thought it'd be down here. And this looks promising. So now what would confirm that weekly cycle low? Ideally, we would get time and space away from this low, okay? And what this will do is if we get this low in here, this confirms that 98K is our bull market invalidation. I've talked about this in previous videos. Technically, right now, you could argue our bull market validation is all the way down at 74K. I don't think anyone wants to do that. If we can put in a significant green candle here, that will confirm to me that this is our bull market invalidation. And if we get back below there on a weekly closing, which I'm already using it, by the way, because I don't want to hold it down here, but that will confirm it. And then at least worst case scenario, if you're bullish here and it ends up being wrong, you have a cut point at like 100K Bitcoin, which is still pretty fucking good. If the top ended up being 120, you're within 20% of the top. That's really good on a 600-700% move, right? So what we're gonna wanna see here in the coming days is, I think, bullish PA away and then eventually over the monthly open, which is around 110, 112 here. Right? We got the monthly open at 110. We're going to want to see a bullish move away here, okay? And once we get that move away, I'm expecting a bounce here. I do not want to see us revisit down here at that point. I want to see us move away and have like, that's it, that's the low, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that we have to go up in a V bottom. It doesn't mean that it has to be in a straight line. And it doesn't even mean that this area is safe. We could very well be forming a low time frame range here. There's a pretty good odds, we saw spot buying at the lows here, that this is a significant low. It doesn't mean that we can't swipe this low, right? But I believe of this entire consolidation, we're in the process of putting in our low, whether this is it or we're gonna have a deeper pull, which would be into the yearly open around 93, 94K. I would shove there. Personally, I think we're in the process of putting in the low for this high time frame consolidation to break higher. It's just trying to time that exact low from a price perspective is very hard. That's why I lost money trying to knife cash this thing. It doesn't matter as much to me though, because I'm much more interested in being right timing wise and directionally, as in that the low is in or almost in and the resulting move is going to be higher. I'm more interested in that than worrying about getting a couple trades wrong, trying to catch the exact low, because if I am indeed right about this overall timing and directionality, there's going to be multiple trades along the way here that I'm going to be able to take with a clear bullish bias, okay? So timing wise, we're very close. Another little caveat here, on most months where Bitcoin is green, okay? Most months where Bitcoin is green, and we have these big rallies. I'm just going to draw out a couple of these. We'll just go back to these ones here. We don't need to go all the way back, okay? So this is the month of September, okay? The low of the month here was early in the month, okay? The low of the month of September was literally on September 1st in this instance, okay? Again, we have July. This was a bullish month. The low of the month was right near the start of the month. So in general, here it is right here, start of the month, bullish May. Start of the month with a dump, bullish April. And you can go back and you can find this here where, look, 12 days into January ends up being a bullish month. Here's the low of last November, 4 days in. Here's the low of October, 10 days in. Not every time. For example, this month, I think it didn't work. Right here, the low of the month was later in the month, right? But more often than not, the low of the month gets put in early in the month. Now, why is this information useful? Well, it's the same reason as to why we can use something like Monday's range. So allow me to explain. When you have a candlestick, okay, right, and it looks like this, and it's a bullish one. Assume this is bullish, okay? Well, really, generally what this looks like is you have your open, you get your low of the month, then you get your high of the month, and then you get the close. And that creates this bullish candlestick. Not every time. You could technically have, there's your open, you could trade lower, right? And then you could trade higher, and then lower again, and then still close bullish, right? So what would that look like? Well, monthly open, we trade low, we trade up, that's the high of the month, and then we actually put the low of the month in, but then we close bullish. This is still a bullish candle. But more often than not, a bullish candle and a bullish monthly candle, like I just showed you there, 8 out of the last 10 months, 9 out of the last 10 months, excuse me, will actually trade with the open, the low, and then the high, and then the close. So the low of the month will be in generally the first third of the month, the first 10 days or so. Well, this is the exact same thing with the weekly candle and how you can trade weekly open strategies and Monday range strategies. Whereas the low of the week, I've told you guys before, is generally early in the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, or the high of the week. So we know where the weekly open is, okay? And then it trades low here on Tuesday, and then boom, it reclaims Monday's low. And it's now this was Tuesday. We have a pretty good guess that, hey, maybe this is going to be a weekly bullish candle, and the low of the week was on Tuesday, so I'm going to look to buy a reclaim of Monday's low or buy a reclaim of the weekly open. It's the same thing for the monthly. So how does that apply to here right now? Well, if we're bullish for November, which I believe is going to end up being a bullish month, then I want to buy, I want to be a bull above the monthly open, right? And I want to see the low of the month get formed in the first kind of 2 weeks, ideally first third, the first 10 days. And we're in that window, okay? So hopefully that all made sense. That was kind of a bit of just a rant there, but that lines up with the weekly cycle timing, all this other bullshit I'm talking about. Last but not least for my case for being bullish is I do think Trump, and he already said in today's speech, oh, the stock market's going to go so high, interest rates are going to come down. Jerome Powell's a nincompoop, right? I think he's got a few more tricks up his sleeve to try and pump this thing up. You got to remember the midterms are next year. If the stock market's doing shit, that's not going to be good. And I think by the time the midterms come around, which is in the second half, right? I believe in Q2, Q3 of next year, I think we're already going to be in a bear market. So I think he's going to do everything in his power to make us look as good as possible before then. One thing that could change here is I know that there's the Supreme Court ruling on the tariffs. I'll be honest with you, that seems like a potential like black swan-esque type of event where if I'm not 100% sure on this, I haven't done enough reading, but if they reject his proposal and effectively say him implementing those tariffs was illegal, does that mean they have to backtrack all the tariffs, give all the money back? Like, I don't know. If they've been collecting this money illegally, that could be bad. But assuming that doesn't happen, I think he's going to do everything in his power to try and pump the markets. And the government is going to reopen. We had a government closure, actually, in 2019. So if you were around back here, okay, when I was just a young warthog, as the kids say, if you were around back here, this little cycle, this was its own little bull market here. And this bull market ended, right, with a government shutdown, reopening. This bear market, excuse me, and this beginning of this little mini cycle here, we had a government reopening here. Okay, and I think that could be a catalyst where, okay, the government reopens, bullish, the government's fucking back, baby, right? So those are all my reasons, including the chart itself, as I've described, why I'm remaining bullish, okay? So there is a chance that the 4-year cycle is over, right? And you see a lot of people talk about this, some smart people too. Now, people who are calling for top, by the way, and there's some smart people who think it's done. Donald, Ben Cowan thinks that it's probably over, maybe slightly higher high. There's smart people who think that it's over, right? And maybe they're right, but that would mean that the 4-year cycle is intact still because we would have put in our all-time high in Q4 of 2025. 4-year cycle would have been intact. A little early, but still would have been intact. The other argument that some people are making is that the 4-year cycle no longer matters because we have this institutional bid and all of this other stuff. Now, I think the institutional bid and the institutionalization of crypto in general, I think it's much more likely that that is a factor for a truncated and less downside volatility bear market than it is for necessarily the 4-year cycle being eliminated, because institutional TradFi markets operate by the 4-year cycles as well. That being said, there's a chance that the 4-year cycle is no more. What does that mean? Well, the good news is if I'm still bullish now and the 4-year cycle is no more, which essentially means we're going to right translate, and I know you're going to be like, what the fuck does the right translation of the weekly cycle? It essentially means that wherever this next pump goes, okay, that we're then going to make another all-time high in like February or March of 2026. That would be a changing of the 4-year cycle. It would be something Bitcoin has never done before, and that would make me reevaluate. But the good news is I'm bullish here. So if this ends up being the case, and we, do this and we come back and I'm like, wow, there's reason to be bullish here. It's holding a higher low. It's giving me bullish PA. I can just remain bullish, right? And I can get back into the markets. I'm obviously personally going to be looking to sell on this leg up here as it goes. How high it goes, I don't know. I'm even going to be selling before all-time high just in case we don't make one. But if we do make a new all-time high and then the market appears to still be bullish, guess what? I can get back on the bull train. I'm more than happy for the 4-year cycle to not be a thing anymore if it means prices are just going to go higher. Because I have Bitcoin I don't plan on selling, and I can also just buy back, right? It's a lot harder to hold on to your spot, believe the 4-year cycle doesn't exist anymore, it goes to a new all-time high, and then we start a bear market, and then you're wondering what bounce you should sell to try and get the fuck out. That's a much more tricky proposition, in my opinion. So there is a chance the 4-year cycle no longer exists. I'm still bullish, and if I see signs to remain bullish, then great, I'll remain more bullish. And effectively what would eliminate the 4-year cycle is we go make an all-time high here, or even a lower high, but then in February or March or something like that, we go and make an all-time high at that point. While I believe the 4-year cycle remains intact, I do think that because of this, 2026 is going to be mostly bearish. I don't think we're going to necessarily see an 80+% drawdown on Bitcoin. I think that's part of the institutionalization of crypto. We're not going to see these crazy pullbacks on Bitcoin. Altcoins, obviously another story. They can go to literally zero. We saw that already. And I'm not even getting into the whole digital asset treasury aspect of all of this, where some of these funds are unwinding and they're trading under 1 NAV. So the amount of crypto they own, the stock is trading at a lower price than the net value of the assets in the company, right? So they might sell some of that crypto to buy back the stock, or there's instances where they have all this crypto, right, that they've bought and they're trading under. I might have gotten the definition wrong here. I don't really care at this point. I'm tired. But the value of the company does not reflect the value of the amount of assets they own, or vice versa, okay? That they bought all this crypto at a certain price. Tom Lee, like, what's his average price on ETH? And the value of the crypto is trading significantly lower than that price, okay? I can't remember fucking the terminology here. It doesn't matter. That's for another video. But I don't think that we're going to see these 80% drawdowns of Bitcoin anymore, personally. So what does that look like? Well, if the top is in at 150, let's say, then maybe we come back to the 70s. Maybe we come back to, this consolidation, 50 to 70, where it's not an 80, 90% drawdown anymore, but it's a 40 or 50% drawdown. Obviously, if we trade up to something crazy like 200, maybe that drawdown is only back to 100, right? Or slightly below 100. We don't know at this point. If we were to get those significant 80% drawdowns again, I mean, from here, 80% drawdown puts us way fucking down back into like the 20Ks. We do technically have a yearly order block here, right? At like 45K. Well, that's from all-time high to there, it's a 60% drop. From 150 to there, 70% drop. I'm not saying we come back here. You might say, why the fuck would I care about a bullish order block? Well, guess where the last bear market ended, right? I'm not saying that this is where we're going to come, but if we do, I'm buying fucking Bitcoin there, okay? But yeah, I don't think we're going to have those 80% drawdowns anymore. And I also believe part of what is going to lead this bear market in crypto, in equities, in a lot of things is the dollar. I posted this on Twitter. I think the dollar's in the process of putting in a very serious low here. This is the 3-month chart. This is the yearly chart here. That red line is a yearly order block, right? So we've got our up move, break structure. We're retesting that yearly order block. We've taken out the last year and the year before's price. Go down to the monthly. Within that yearly order block, there's a monthly order block. We've swept out that low. This is a pretty serious low here. And if we reclaim this, there's a good chance this rallies all the way back up into here. And we have a big deflationary rally in the US dollar, coupled with, and I'm not saying there's always this, someone's like, oh, the inverse correlation between crypto and Bitcoin, it's not always one-to-one. It's definitely not, right? But there is a correlation here between this and risk and yield and risk and things like crypto. And if this has a huge rally, I don't think that that's good for Bitcoin necessarily, okay? You know, like this is the bear market right here. The last bear market. This last big rally, August of 2024, right, was the top here. And then this down move for the next, month. That was this rally here. And then, yeah, we've had this huge move down. Well, this is when Bitcoin bottomed, and then it went to its new highs. Dollar was in a downtrend. So even though it's not always a one-to-one correlation, directionally it does matter. And I think that the dollar is due for a big rally up into here. Whether this is the low or there's one more, I think that we are going to be putting in a big rally in the dollar next year. And that just lines up with some of my thoughts for why Bitcoin and risk and things like that could be in a bear market next year. Okay? But yeah, I believe it's going to be a mostly bullish year for the dollar. I believe 2026 will be a mostly bearish year for Bitcoin. There are bearish scenarios here. This rally fails to create a new all-time high or a very weak one, just like a slightly higher high. And maybe this is just distribution. Like maybe the banks literally came in and Larry Fink and BlackRock and all the institutions and the smart money, and maybe they've just been distributing on us here. Like this could be very well the inverse of what I'm looking for, which is like the spring. If you're a Wyckoff guy, right? This is the spring, and this whole thing just ends up being distribution for lower, right? Totally possible. And then this is the most anticlimactic gay top we've ever seen, and Bitcoin and the bankers fucking stole our coins and then dumped them on us at the top. It's a possibility, okay? So there's a world where this entire thing is distribution. There's a world where we make a lower high here, right? And again, if this lower high occurs within that timing window, the next couple of months here, Q1 of 2026, and then we make a new cycle low. So if we make a lower high in December here, and then in January we break this low, to me the top is in, right? And we're now looking down here. So we don't really want to see that. We want to see the low get formed here soon and a new all-time high. There's also a world, of course, where, yeah, we make an all-time high, but it's just a weak one. Like, we just sweep this out. Then you're going to have the biggest bear div of all bear divs up here at that point. If you add the RSI here, I know a lot of people are being like, man, the bear divs, the bear divs. Like, yeah, dude, there would definitely be a giga bear div here. It's already in. It's already in. Right? We've got lower highs across the board here on the RSI with higher highs on crypto. So if we somehow just made like one slightly higher high and then right back down, and this just was like another boom, like, that's not good. But this is already a huge bear div, even right here, right? From this peak to this peak, there's your bearish divergence. But again, we're not here to be gay bears, right? We're here to be super Chadley, not gay, right? Bulls, okay? So, yeah, there's a bearish argument. I said I'd summarize all this in tonight's video. That's what I'm doing here. I'm sticking with my guns for now. We did have someone be like, oh, but what about all the bearish PA? So, I mean, there is absolutely some bearish PA here, right? Like the chart has a lot of things where you could look at this and say, hey, this is bearish objectively. And yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, weekly and monthly SFP, weekly structure break, we're losing the 2024 range. There's a lot of reasons to be bearish here, but that is the beauty of the markets, right? We can have different opinions and one of us will be right, one of us will be wrong. As long as you know where your idea is, valid and where it's incorrect, you're just going to let the market decide, right? Like if you're bullish, I'm bearish, here's my thoughts, here's your thoughts. Great. Some guys like, only an idiot would long this. Like, okay, then don't long it. Short it. I don't care, right? Like I know my plan. I've laid it out. It's researched. It's thorough. I know my entries. I know my validations. I know my exits. There's nothing else I can do now but wait, okay, and be patient. So that's what we're going to see here over the coming days, right? A little bit more ranging, a little bit more chop. Ideally, right, sooner than later though, maybe one more sweep, I don't know, maybe this is it, right? But sooner than later, I want to see time and space away from this low and a reclaim of the monthly open sometime early to mid next week for confirmation of this being the weekly low. And then we're playing the much more important game, which is this a rally to here? Or is this a rally to, new all-time highs? Okay? That bearish chart, for those wondering, so this is last year's candle range, okay? At the top here, we're outside of that range. We've swept the monthly high. Go down to the weekly. You have a weekly structure break here, right? If we close bad, this could just be a sell rally. That lines up with the lower high thesis, right? Maybe we run these highs, but that's just the rally you sell and you target the mid-range. There's your invalidation. Like that's the bearish trade right there. If you didn't get in the short up here, which was just a microcosm of this, if you remember, I tried to short this move, but I got stopped out, which was this weekly sweep here. And then a bearish retest, and it just eked out a slightly higher high and stopped me out. But it was just a bearish retest here, and maybe that's all this is here. But for now, I'm sticking with my guns on the bull side, and people comparing this to 2021. That is how we topped, right? We had a bear div, weekly sweep, structure break, bearish retest, bang, same thing here. So at this point, guys, it's not up to us. It's up to the market. I've laid out my plan. I know what I'm looking for. I'm prepared for whatever the market's going to throw at me, and we're going to live with the result, okay? So I'm hoping I'm right, obviously, because I'll make more money. And Bitcoin won't have this kind of anticlimactic top where, there wasn't really this big blow-off move and it just was kind of distribution right in our fucking faces, Maybe that's the case. But I do think 2026, regardless of what happens over the next couple of months, is quite bearish. So I'm prepared for that. I think being in cash is a strong position going into, mid to late next year. And hopefully buying Bitcoin, in 50, 60, 70K in a year's time, year and a half's time, and equities and some of these mega tech stocks at just lower prices. I saw some guy turn 30K into 10 million, he said, with no options, just trading stocks. And I know Michael Burry is called, 100 of the last 2 market crashes, but he's not wrong. There is a bubble going on here. We just have this weird consensual thing with OpenAI and all these other tech companies that make up the vast majority of the stock market. OpenAI doesn't, but it's not I don't know how sustainable this is, and I think there's a massive dislocation between the actual CPI information, jobs information, inflation data, and the reality of that versus what we're being told, what we're seeing, and what the market is representing right now. So that's what I got, guys. Long video. I'm sorry for ranting for almost 40 minutes, goddamn, but hopefully you find it valuable. As always, if you want to support me, check out all my bullshit in the description of the video. Breakout prop, code MAIN for a discount. You can join the Haven below. Check out the IMG indicator. I'm starting to feel better now. I actually had a crazy brain fog I was telling you about. I went to the doctor. They said I had inflamed, a sinus infection. So I'm now on some bullshit, some steroids and some other stuff, and it seems to be helping. So hopefully I'm back on the mend soon. Yeah. IMG, Haven, Breakout, all my ref links, all the bullshit in the description of the video. As always, these are free. If you want to support me, just tell me I'm handsome. Watch the video, like, subscribe, follow me on all platforms. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.